No Cowboys. You do not win deals by yourself.
You are listening to The Deal Breakdown with Derek Shebby, where we spotlight the best deals out there in B2B sales, from the open all the way to the close. Welcome to the B2B Deal Breakdown podcast, where we give you the play-by-play on some of the best deals out there. I'm Derek Shebby, and I'm excited to be meeting with Pete Scanlan. He's an enterprise account executive in the SaaS industry. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Derek. It's great to be here, and I appreciate you inviting me on. Looking forward to this.
I know our listeners are going to be so excited to hear about, your experience and the exciting deals you've done, and there's a lot to learn from it. So could you start by telling the listeners a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I've been selling for quite a few years, but the last 12 years, I've been really specifically involved as a SaaS account executive. So I'm an individual contributor. Tend to focus on the enterprise, but lately I've been working for not startups, but more kind of B, C round software companies. Last 10 years, really focused on marketing technology.
Okay.
Anything else to add to that?
Well, I guess the roles that you've held at those organizations.
Sure. Yeah. So currently, I'm with a company by the name of Blue Shift. We can talk about that in a moment. But really, my role, which I love, is again, I am an account executive. I have a number, and it is my job to go get that number, right? And to reiterate, most of us now in this role, we're working for software as a service companies. So I think everybody, your listeners, can essentially relate to what that means. And then when I say B, C round companies, I love that size of company because I feel my contributions are felt as opposed to a much larger organization. And there are great things about working for the big gorillas out there, and I will battle with them. But for me personally, at this stage in my career, I really enjoy the size of a company, maybe 100, 200 people and, BC round. And it's, your wins are felt, they make a significant impact. Conversely, the spotlight's on you. You can't run and hide. But it's cool. I'm a fairly competitive person, and, I love the hunt, and I love the win, and I love learning along the way. And probably as I thought about preparing for this, I've been doing this a long time, and, I took your training, and we always can learn, right? We can always get better. And you just got to really continue to believe that. And I thought about that a lot in your training. It's like, I don't have this figured out. And selling it's constantly changing. And I think it's changed quite a bit, even in the last few years. There are tools available to us. Those that are making decisions and buying from us sellers are different. They're different now.
Yeah.
So you just got to constantly be honing your craft. And, that's just a little bit about how I think about this job.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the role that you choose and going in the BC round timeframe, because just like you said, I mean, you and what you do can make or break the success of that organization. And you get appreciated. You're obviously appreciated for those contributions. And it's cool how you stuck in that same area in your career, and you've probably been part of some pretty amazing companies. So let's talk a little bit about what you sell now at Blue Shift. What
Sure.
challenges your offering solve, and the industries that it serves.
Sure. So as I had mentioned, I've been in marketing technology for about 10 years, and I just noticed a consistent theme, a consistent pain point, which was, you can have the coolest marketing technology software in the world, but if your customers' data, their customer data, specifically their first party data, If that is super siloed, and I can talk about that in a second, it's really difficult to make great marketing technology work, right? So the first and foremost, what you have to do is really unify that customer data, right? So when I made my decision to come to Blue Shift, I was like, what's the underlying problem, right? And it was really around customer data. So I gravitated, generally speaking, towards customer data platforms or CDPs. But I was really drawn to Blue Shift because they take that a step further. So Blue Shift, you know, foundationally has a customer data platform, but then our brilliant founders, that wasn't quite enough, right? So artificial intelligence today is at a point where you can really start to legitimately apply it. So that's what we do. So we try to take that customer data and make it smart with AI. And then from within that same platform, you're able to orchestrate and execute those campaigns. So across, email, SMS, push, social. So you have this environment that creates a ton of efficiencies for small teams, large teams, whatever. It takes away a lot of the mundane tasks, that a machine actually can do. It can listen for signals, et cetera, and help our customers, right? And so I love that. And I love the fact that it makes teams highly efficient. And I love the fact that what we do really does generate engagement, right? When I kind of got into this 10 years ago, the idea of one-to-one personalization was it wasn't real. It just, the underlying tech wasn't there. And fast forward to today, it is. And so that's what we do. And it's sort of been an interesting journey for me to get to this point.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say one-to-one. I mean, the business that I came from Xerox, we had we dealt with the customizing the cards that you'd get in the mail. So like for instance, I have a dog, and it would say, "Hey, it's time for Maddie's checkup. We'll give her a free bone when she comes in."
Yeah.
That one-to-one, I'm like, oh my, they know my dog. I've got to make sure I go in and say hi. But yeah, you're so right. Especially with the industry that you're in, where on the internet or online, we have all this data about customers, and businesses are spending so much money on marketing every single day. And a lot of times you spend the money and you cross your fingers and think you're making the right decision. And it's really, it's awesome again, how you're getting involved in a company that's really helping all of those organizations that are crossing their fingers in their marketing budget, and you're giving them artificial intelligence to actually help them to make the right decisions with that data. And I think it's, you're right, the lead, turning that into something that could be mainstream and big. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
So this specific deal that you want to talk about today, why did you choose this one? It sounds like you've got so much experience in your career. Why this specific deal?
I like this deal because, one, it was super recent. And when you and I talked about this, just recency is great because it's fresh in my head. So I like that. I thought it was a good deal to choose because it was competitive. And I think all your listeners can relate to that. There was a bit of a COVID angle on it. So I thought that was relevant. And, it's about leveraging first party data, which I liked. And then I also liked the angle that the existing current solution was a homegrown solution. And this business decided to look outside of that for certain reasons that we can talk about. So all those added up, I thought made it an interesting one for you and I to discuss. Yeah,
you're really teeing this one up. This one sounds
buddy.
I mean, they got a homegrown solution. I mean, that means you're talking about a company that they don't think the other stuff out there is great, and they're just making their own legacy stuff. And the fact that you're coming in with the best product and them going from where they're at to there, man, okay. The story sounds like it's gonna be really good. So the size deal, what size deal are we talking about in terms of like your budget? What did it end up being?
Right. So this represented about 50% of my quarterly quota.
Nice.
So, so a significant real opportunity to move me along. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something to consider also just for the listeners, that although this specific deal represented, 50% of your quota for the quarter, this deal probably helped make this company, if even though it's just happened recently, they're probably going to make so much more money as an organization because of your technology that you were able to implement. So they're going to make way more than, off of this in the end.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, the ROI on it, ROI is an interesting thing. We all talk
Yeah.
about ROI. I think our buyers sometimes, I don't, if you have to be credible when you talk about ROI. And I have 100% faith that we're going to deliver significant ROI on this one.
Yeah. Awesome. So how did you find this particular deal, this company?
So this one started out via a relationship. Somebody at my company knew somebody at that company. So that was kind of where the first spark occurred, and then we grew it from there. As I thought about today and preparing, that just is a reminder that as I'm prospecting, trying to build my own pipeline. Everybody who's listening knows this, but man, I just can't imagine, not too long ago, pre-LinkedIn, pre-Sales Navigator. It's just utterly fascinating to me how helpful that tool is, or that system is, or that platform is, whatever you want to call it. My point about relationships and how this started with a relationship is it's just the importance of LinkedIn and the importance of Sales Navigator, and being able to set up searches and what it's so effective. And I know everybody who's listening knows that, but man, I want to reemphasize it.
They might not all know that, Pete. I mean, there's people from all different types of B2B spaces, and
Okay.
yeah, that's great.
So to those people, you would be shocked how big your network is. You should look into it, and it should just become part of your daily prospecting process. It's super valuable.
Great. So did you have these guys on your radar at first and say, I want to try to break into this company, and then you looked on LinkedIn and found that there was a connection that you had to them?
This one was, I would say, a bit off radar. But then because of this relationship, from an individual in my company and an individual in their company, that's how it began. Certainly, I have a set of accounts, that I really focus on. And in those instances, I am proactively really hunting, for relationships, right? To get a warm intro.
Yeah.
This one started a little bit differently in that it was, not like this, one of my kind of like focus 10 accounts, but nevertheless, it was, a deal that I ran, but I wanted to be clear with you how it started.
Yeah.
A lot of work occurred once that initial spark was lit via that relationship.
Yeah, I think it's great because especially right now, people, as people are listening to this during the pandemic, they might be thinking, they might be thinking, how can I get creative to find these opportunities? And sometimes what you're saying right now is, outside of your normal methods, don't overlook the fact that you have connections right now that people do need what you have to sell. So then from there, what was your first touch like? You reaching out to the customer and to start that first conversation, did you have to, was there any sort of prospecting element to it? Like you had to get them interested in meeting?
Yeah, there was this relationship, so we kind of had gotten through that first gate of there's some interest, right? So really, the first touch was around discovery.
Okay.
And the way I would pose it is, why anything at all, right? And why now? right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of like the two questions. Why are you even looking at anything? And then why is it that you're doing that now? So that's what that initial touch, that initial discovery was centered around.
So now that the listeners understand what you sell, and those two great questions you have right there, why is there a need and why now? What did they say? Like, what made it something that that this became interesting for them to look at? What challenges were they facing?
Right. So, and we hadn't really, and I think this is important, we hadn't begun selling yet. It was really, it's more you're on a mission to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
I can talk a little bit about that in a moment, kind of how I approach every single deal that I go after. But it's really, what is your current state, right? What's it
Right.
like right now? And what's bad about that, right? So it's, what's your current state and what are the negative business implications of that current state, right? And
Right.
again, many of your listeners, this is not new. That's a very common way to look at a prospect. And so your question to me was, well, what did I discover, right?
Yeah.
So what we discovered was that, they had, and this is, not uncommon. They had built a system in house that when they built it, it made a lot of sense. It was super, customized to their use case, right? But then companies grow and
Right.
grow. They hopefully they grow, and they grow and they grow and they grow, and then that thing starts to that homegrown system kind of starts to break. And the maintenance of that system is expensive, right? And in this case, there were, a couple of engineers that were dedicated to keeping that baby humming, and that was expensive. And then once, COVID hit, um, it became even, those resources, the value of those resources grew, right? So it, in a sense, it became even more expensive.
Yeah.
And the capabilities, while were wonderful at the beginning, like I said, things change so quickly, in our roles and things change quickly with our prospects. So they needed more capabilities, and they believe that personalization, leveraging their first party data, was part of the answer. And so that's what I learned, right? I learned that their current homegrown system was no longer sufficient. It was becoming very expensive to maintain. And what possibly could they find outside of, out of house,
Yeah.
that might be able to get them to their desired state?
Yeah. I think something that the listeners should learn here too, because they may not know this, but asking that, having the confidence to ask, well, why are you looking? Why are you looking
Yeah.
for something else? I think that I would consider that to be something, a more advanced skill to develop, where you're confident in yourself. You understand that what's most important is just to say, look, why is there even a deal here? Like, why are we even talking? Let's just make sure we should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I
a lot of
I I,
confidence.
I totally agree with you. And I think we need to be confident. And
Yeah.
I think we need to, we're not just, quote unquote salespeople. And I believe in this career path that I have chosen, and I think that we have value to add. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions around, the salesperson. Um, and I think if we're not careful as salespeople, maybe we start to buy into that, and that's not good. I mean, you've got to be good at what you do, and you always have to be mindful of delivering value back to your prospect. You need to earn the right, as we like to say.
Yeah.
But we can earn it, and therefore I think it just adds to your credibility if you ask that question. like, why are you even looking, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And I think, in fact, by asking that question, that will add to your credibility,
Yeah.
right? So you should, with not cockiness, but with confidence, you should say, hey, why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah.
Use your own words, but get to that.
Yeah. And I hope people realize that that's something that you'll build up to. And it's not you saying, hey, we shouldn't have this conversation. It's you saying, let's just make sure that there's really a problem that I can help you solve. And I think that puts you on another level. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a good question. It opens them up to, then they can speak, and then you need to shut up and listen. But yeah, I think it's a great opener.
It is. And it's an advanced skill, Pete. So I just want to make sure people recognize that if you're not saying that in your meetings, in your discovery meetings, then you probably need to reevaluate, your skill level in those discovery meetings. So what did the first meeting close for? Like, what was the next step?
Yeah. Good one. So another key theme of mine was we had an individual who was interested, right? And I think the trap that one can fall into is to get single threaded, right? We like people who like us. We like people who think what we do or the technology that we deliver is awesome, right? We just, as human beings, we naturally gravitate towards that. The reality is that, decisions are made by a bunch of people, right? So my point is, get multi-threaded, right? Get multi-threaded. Don't be single-threaded. Fight the urge to just gravitate to that one person who thinks what you do is awesome, and they think, hey, Pete, you're a great guy, whatever, right? That's fine. So my point is, my close was for the next meeting. It was closing for a next meeting with an expanded audience. Who else is involved? Who else is going to, help decide, right?
Yeah.
It's always, there are always more people that you don't know about, right?
Yeah.
So that was the goal, was to close for a demonstration. And not only that, but who else? What other stakeholders should be involved in this demonstration? So that was the objective.
Yeah, and I think that's also a real strategic thing on your part, because you probably found out when you found out that they're using a legacy system today, then that means that there's maybe a culture that's not innovative over there, and they're not thinking ahead and thinking about what else they could be using. And you looked at that, said, I want to get all those people that have any sort of concerns or any sort of, they could become roadblocks in the same room to just talk about it together. And I think that's, I don't know if that's your normal policy to get more stakeholders, but it sounds like in this specific instance, it was a really good next step for you to think about. Let's get all those people that could be keeping us using that system that they made 10 years ago.
Right.
To talk about it.
Right. Yeah. It's always the goal to get more, to get multi-threaded. And then another point on the homegrown thing, there are people who spent a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears developing that thing. Right. Yeah. And so you have to be mindful of that, right? They put a lot of work into it. But the landscape changes and you've got to evolve. So you just, you have to be mindful of that, and respectful of the good work that they put in to develop that homegrown system. And now it's, it's time for evolution, we think. And let's look at that, right? Yeah. So just be respectful and mindful of the other side that you're talking to.
Absolutely. So how many more of these meetings did you have to do before you did the demo?
So after that initial discovery conversation, we probably had a couple mini conversations, and then we had the first kind of big demo, right? Which had multiple, had more stakeholders. Didn't have them all. There were probably about three. I think were three demonstrations with three separate buckets of people, right? So it was, there were a lot of folks involved, but that to answer your question directly, there were a couple small conversations. Very importantly, before that demo, there was prep, right?
For
Lots
sure.
of preparation, not just internally, tons of that, but something that I wanted to bring up is the idea of developing a coach, right? And I'm always worried that I'm stating the obvious, but I'm going to go ahead and state it. It's so and it's hard developing a coach. You don't just go, "Hey, will you be my coach?" That doesn't happen. You need to earn it, right? But if you put the time and effort and thought into developing a coach, you have a leg up big time if your competitor or competitors are not doing the same. And so that's what we did. And, so back to my point on prep is prep internally, but prep with your coach. Like, this is what we're thinking of presenting. Does, these are the slides, make sense, doesn't make sense, too much, too little, just, and this doesn't have to be a 5-hour prep session. You can do it in 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then this is what we're thinking for the demo flow. You don't have to go through the whole demo, but we're going to hit this, so just, if you can, that's freaking huge, right?
Yeah.
You want them to tell you if the path that you're going down for that presentation, for that demo is correct, right?
Right.
Don't guess, and sometimes you can't get that, right? You can't get that every time. But in this case, we could. And I would always try, from the beginning, well, always, you must put forth the effort to develop a coach.
Yeah. So I love that. And I think other people might associate the coach with the champion. So have a champion within the organization. Is that, you're referring to that as the same?
Yeah, that's funny. That's interesting because we all talk about a coach and we talk about a champion, and there are different definitions of both. I think theoretically a champion has more power, right? Or they're above the power line, right? They can actually, introduce you up, pull you higher. I would say in this case, I think there are two distinct roles, a coach and a champion. In this case, I think it was both. I know for a fact that this person did have power and they were a coach. So yay. That's pretty great. But
Yeah.
I think there is a distinction between the two. And so what I'm saying specifically here is develop a coach. Sure, if that person has power, they can also become your champion. But specifically to that question, I want somebody on the other side who can keep me on track.
Good.
And who feels that I've earned the right to have a more open conversation with them about how we're doing. Are we going down the right path? Are we hitting on the right pain points, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think it's also, in general, you might call all these different things that you're doing throughout, what you're asking on these appointments, you developing a coach, this is strategy. You look at a deal and you're going, how do I win this type of deal? And especially with what you're selling in these B2C rounds, most of the time people haven't even heard about these products or these solutions. They don't even know. And so this strategy that that you've probably been doing for years, Pete, is it's an advanced skill, but it just requires thought up front and to think about how can I have this happen and this happen and this happen and this happen. And if you do all those things, you end up stacking this deal in your favor and you have a better chance of winning. So that's great. So if you look at these demos that you're doing then, because you said you did 3 demos, so 3 different sets of stakeholders in these demos, were there anything unique that happened? Anything that you were just like, wow, that really landed? Any key moments that happened in those demos?
Yeah, there's a good one. So, I'll break, it was 3 demos. I felt, like we were really focused. It was, all hands on deck, super well prepared. And it was interesting. The 3rd demo was, I think sort of our take on it was, okay, well, we have to do this 3rd demo. It's not, the first two were the most important. Those were the right people, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third one came, and it was interesting. There was some resistance, and it was, so I think what I wrote down as I was thinking about this, it's like, you can't stop, you can't let up, you can't assume, right? And you got to fight these little tricks that our minds can play on us. So it wasn't that we were underprepared, but I think that maybe, we're taken a little bit aback by that, right? That, the first two where we got it, it was a good flow, good engagement, good exchange of information, felt like we were building credibility, felt like we were advancing the deal. And then it got a little, we hit some turbulence in that third one. So we got through that, went back to our coach, he's like, it's fine. Everything's good. So again, get a coach.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay. But my point is, you can't let up, and just be ready.
Yeah.
Like what you said what I loved about your training was, it was be ready, right? Like when you're cold calling, of course they don't have time for you, but be ready for that. So I just thought of that. So I tie that back in here. It's, we were on a roll, things were feeling good. We thought that the third one was, it wasn't in the bag, but we felt, it was just a good learning, right?
Yeah.
Just don't assume you got it, not the deal in the bag, but you got the meeting in the bag. Just be ready.
Yeah. And yeah, it's for it to be the third one too. I mean, after all the best people done and you think we're good. And then the third one throws you the curveball.
100%. Curveballs are coming when you least expect them.
Yeah.
So just like you say, be ready.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff. So then you got to the proposal next. Can you tell us about how that went?
Yeah. So that was interesting. The proposal, we started down that path. The proposal, 6 slides, pricing, et cetera. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of up and down. And then literally it stopped. It was like, we're going to pull back and sort of think about this. And so it was kind of interesting, right? It was like, so communication kept going with our coach, but it was interesting. And I wanted to, I'll go, I want to kind of line this up with sort of the deal cycle, because some of this happens sort of in parallel.
Yeah.
But the point of this is that there was a stop, there was a pause, there was kind of a pullback. And we didn't panic. Your customer has to do what your customer has to do. Right. And so, but we went back to our coach, we spent some time with him, and then the conversations around proposal pricing resumed. So I kind of want to run that a little bit as a parallel path to the other stuff that I've been talking about.
Yeah.
But again, there are curves in the road that you may not foresee. But we sort of stuck with it, and we got things back on track, and we got into, real legitimate material negotiation. Right. So I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly or not. You can ask me some follow-ups, but.
Well, I actually have some questions along the proposal. So you said there's some ups and downs. So you go through your 6 slides, and at this point, you've met with all the right stakeholders. People have been giving you the thumbs up. They've been liking the demos, but then something was there a mistake that you look back on and say that we
Yeah.
made a mistake somewhere?
Yeah. So one thing I mentioned earlier that this was competitive, right?
Yeah.
And it was competitive. And, you know, sort of midway through the cycle, it was our understanding that one of the competitors was out, and it was us and the other one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to keep in mind that your competitor has a guy or a girl, whatever, a man or a woman, just like me,
Right.
representing them, right?
Right.
So they're told you're out. So if somebody tells me I'm out, I'm not just going to walk away,
Right.
right?
No way.
And so they came back, and all of a sudden they were back in. So my point here is it was a competitive deal. You have two other businesses that want this business just as bad as you do. Um, we were under the impression that one of them was out and the other one was in, and it was down to two. And that changed. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was part of, I don't know that we made a mistake. But you got to just, like I said, it's you cannot let up. You've Until that thing is done and signed, you have to be on, right? You have to be on and thinking about, stuff that's sort of outside of your control that could be
Right.
happening. Um, so that was a learning there. You're in a competitive situation. Do not forget that there's a Pete Scanlon, there are two Pete Scanlons on the other side
That's
that
right.
want that thing just as bad as you do. And they're going to, you must assume that they're going to go for it just as hard as you're going for it. So don't lose sight of that.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
want
something I've learned, because I can get caught up in my own little world, and it's like everything's going great. We're moving along the process. I'm getting good feedback. I'm multi-threaded. Blah, blah, blah.
right.
Somebody else is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So don't just maintain awareness, be mindful of that.
Yeah. I would also say that's an advanced skill too, to realize that your competition, if you look at them like someone that's trying just as hard as you to win the deal,
Yes.
that takes time
Yes.
to get in that mindset, because earlier on in your B2B career, you're thinking no one's better than me, and I'm the
Yeah.
best person on this deal,
Yeah.
and these guys are going to be happy to work with me. And they're not, it doesn't matter if competition's in it, because competition's not even in it. They're just thinking about me. They chose me,
Yeah.
and that's it. And I think
Yeah.
it comes with you losing, or I like to call it getting your battle tested. And you're battle tested when you lose those big, huge deals that could represent a quarter or a half year budget for you, and you lose it and you thought you were going to win,
Yeah.
to stop and go, I never want that to happen again. And that's when you start really respecting the competition and thinking
Yeah.
more about what you can do to separate yourself throughout. And it sounds like you've got a lot of good strategy you did in this deal. So at this point, you had this proposal not land like you wanted it to. You hung in there. It kept going. How did this thing end up progressing to the next step, to the point where they were saying, we're going to go with you?
So I think what we did well was, we kept, at the beginning of this process, I talked about, what's your current state? What's bad about that, right? And I think, and then from there you go to what's your desired state? Where do you want to get to, and what's good about that? Like, what are the positive business outcomes? And then I like to think about, this is how we do it. This is how we do it better. And here are proof points being references. So I think what we always, kept front of mind was, what was their current state, and what was, as they explained to us, not what we believe, but what they told us. And, what was bad about that? What were the negative business implications of that? So keep that front of mind, right? Kept that front of mind. We're here and we've gotten this far because you told us at the very beginning this is what's wrong with the current state, right? So always keep that, up front and center in your head. Remember, don't lose sight of that. The other piece that we did well was, and really helped us, and I'm sure our competitors, I'm assuming, had this, but was references. And, there's a time and a place for that. The time and the place for that is later in the deal cycle, because they're your customers, they're precious, they're gold. You want to, be respectful of them, but there are some that are, they believe in your solution, right? And they're happy to talk about that. So we did a good job there. We did a good job with proof points. And another point on that, and this is something that's out of your control, like we're going to bring forth, we recommend you talk to, company A because of this, because they look like you, and company B because of this, because they look like you from this angle. But they're going to back channel you, right? They're going to, and that's one of the big things I think that's really evolved in selling, is so much of the prospects, there are tools available. Communication is just free flowing, so much more free flowing today than it was. There are resources online. So a prospect, I'm diverting here a little bit, I'll bring it back. They can do a ton of research on their own, right?
Right.
So they are going to back channel you. They are going to, great, appreciate the references. They'll go off, you set that up, you prep your reference, you bring them together, they talk. You can control that, and you got to do a good job with it. And hopefully your business has, those references available. Yeah. But they're also going to go, they're going to back channel on you and do their own work. So my point is, I felt like we did a really good job there. I think that helped us a lot, because they spoke with the right people, independent third party kind of validation of what we do.
Right.
And then the second point was always keep in mind, kind of the why anything, why are we talking? Okay, there is pain there. There is a problem. They've got to get to a better place, and we're going to help them do that.
Yeah.
Does that work?
No, that works. That sounds great. That makes a lot of sense. So, going back to the actual, the deal, when they said, yes, Pete, we want to go with you, how soon did they move forward? Was it right away, or was there a delay?
That happened pretty quickly. Like once we got through the commercials, we had that sort of lull in between, but we got through that. And that was an important phase, actually, because I think on their side, they had a little bit of a just internal thinking about things. But we got through that lull. We settled on commercials. And then from there, it really started firing, to signature. And then, very quick, I haven't even talked about post-sale, and then we moved very quickly into, kickoff meeting, and, we were running fast. So, it was, once we kind of got through that lull, we got commercials settled. Yeah. We got it done, and we got, to the quote unquote finish line of the sales process and got that signature.
That's great. Now, if looking back against the competition, what would you say are the reasons why they decided to choose you? Outside, I know you gave three keys to winning right there, but if we were to ask the customer why they went with you, do you know why they chose you over the competition?
Yeah, I think it was a few things, right? I think we did a good job staying focused on what they told us, what their current state was, and what was bad about the current state. And we stayed on point, and we talked specifically about how what we do will address that, right? We never let up on that, right? We kind of had to come back to it. Remember, A, B, C. So I think, I don't know what my competitors did with that regard, but I felt like we did a good job there. And I also wrote down in my notes, it ain't over till it's over, right? And so I think we did a good job of not letting up. I thought we did a really good job of being multi-threaded. And here's the point that I've kind of missed in this whole thing. But we did a good job of lining up. Like, I lined up with somebody on their side. My CEO lined up with another person on their side. My head of customer success lined up with somebody else over there, right? So you're creating these different connection points. The more you do that, the better, right? And if the prospect is amenable, awesome, that is great, because now, going way back into my career, and I'm sure some of your listeners have heard this, no Cowboys. You do not win deals by yourself.
Right.
And if you lose a deal by yourself, that's bad, right? So, to your original question, just creating different connection points outside of yourself as the AE, right? And just lining those up and having those conversations take place. Because again, it's not one person on the other side that makes a decision. It's a bunch of people. And I think we did a good job
Well,
there. I think that actually really helped us win.
I think, again, what seems so natural to you, Pete, I see as advanced skills. And it's not like your CEO was there saying, hey, I want to meet their CEO. You're saying, what would help give us an edge, or give us, not necessarily an edge, but more stack this deal in our favor, is to make an introduction between you two, have you connect with them, and you pair up all these people. That is something you would do in an advanced skill. And
yeah. And it's valuable for them. It's totally valuable for us.
Yeah.
But in many cases, if I'm on the buying side, I want to know who this guy is, or who this woman is, right? So it's bidirectional value by creating those connections.
Yeah. And I think it's something that everyone should be doing. And it's one of those things that comes up when you lose a deal. You sit back and you say, man, if I could just go back and do this deal over again, what would I do differently? And you go, well, I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and I do. And over the years, those sort of things that you just brainstorm to think, if I did all these things, we'd have the best chance to win. Over the years, that just becomes strategy, and you just end up doing that every single time. And I think it's the things that you're saying are so natural of having multi-threaded and making those introductions. I mean, your CEO is not coming into the office that day saying, what companies can I talk to today, and make that. They're doing their thing, but you are the one orchestrating all of this. And I think it's that's a lesson to all the B2B salespeople listening in, that sometimes it takes losing a major opportunity that you really thought you were going to win to really have this really set in and go, I have to do this every single time. It's just the right thing to do by the customer, but it also gives us the right opportunity as a company to win. And I think you did a fantastic job of that.
Yeah. I mean, sounds cliche, but that's how we learn. It's in the crappy times, the hard losses. It becomes visceral. It's like, crap, that hurt. And then you learn that way. Right.
Yeah.
And just like you said, it's like, why, what happened? Why did I lose? Okay. And that just gets burned into your brain, and it's there for the next one.
Yeah. And it builds up, and over the years it becomes strategy. Like, I got to find a way to get this happen. Yeah. So looking back, what about 3 things that you think didn't go so well that you would want to do differently next time on this deal?
I think, it's don't fall into a false sense of security, right? Maybe, going back to that third demo, it ain't over till it's over. So I think, that's just so important. I don't think, we let up, but I think you just, lesson learned, it reinforced, it ain't over till it's over. Secondly, there are always more people that you don't know about, right? Yeah. You don't work there. You have a coach. You should try like hell to get a coach. But there are always more people. There's other stuff going on, right? So don't stop discovery, right? Don't stop. Always continue to qualify. You can use that word, or continue to discover. That doesn't stop, right? It just doesn't. Even when you're down to the 5-yard line, there's stuff you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So I think, I don't necessarily, I think that was a reinforcement. It's like, it ain't over till it's over. Don't stop discovery. I think those are kind of the big ones. And, and then I guess you said 3, just be ready for anything, right? I think you gotta keep your guard up. You got to keep your brain turned on, and you just got to listen, and you just can't let up on that. Just be ready.
Yeah. This has been an amazing deal. And I think it's amazing because the things that come so natural to you are things that I would consider to be advanced skills. And there's a lot of them that you mentioned. It's not just one throughout this entire deal. And I think there's so many salespeople, B2B salespeople, that they still have to learn those things. And I think your examples inside of this deal, they're going to come out of that. So any final words of wisdom, things to share with the audience to help bring them more value in their deals?
No. I think I've said it. I think I've really hit on everything. I think I've said be ready enough. Yeah. I think I think you got to be multi-threaded. Current state, desired state, all that stuff, and just maintain discipline, and don't. Discovery never ends, right? So just it ain't over till it's over, man. Stuff pops up in the 11th hour. Just keep your foot on the gas and get it over the line.
Yeah, it's all right on 100%. So if people that are listening wanted to reach out to you further, just to get your advice on different things, or even just to say that they got a lot out of this episode, what's the best way?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. My name is Peter. The last name is Scanlon, SCAN as in Nancy, LAN as in Nancy. But as I alluded to earlier, I kind of live in LinkedIn and Sales Navigator. So hit me up there. And networking is huge, man. It's the tools are available to us to network. So I would welcome anybody wanting to reach out to me and, chat. Be totally up for that.
Well, this has been amazing, Pete. I really just wanted to thank you for coming on this show and sharing this great deal. There's so many people that are going to get great lessons out of this.
Awesome. And I appreciate you inviting me, Derek.
Thanks. So that's it for today's session, everybody. Again, thank you so much, Pete, for helping all of our fellow B2B salespeople out there improve their sales skills. Now, for our listeners, if you'd like today's highlights, be sure to check out our summary on salesin21days.com. Have a great sales week, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, then you have to come check out our free Top Performer Academy course. Inside it, I'll give you 12 sales tips that only the best salespeople do on a daily basis. Tips ranging from cold calling to running effective appointments, handling objections, and creating urgency in your deals. You can get it 100% free at www.modernsalestraining.com/free. That's modernSalesTraining.com/free. These 12 tips could be the difference between you having a good month or an incredible one. I hope to see you there.